I was born in a little place outside of Sheffield called Wortley in 1963.
Okay, and can you tell me a bit about your family heritage and background, please?
My mother is half African. Her father came from Gambia, and he was a first mate on quite a lot of ships. And her mother was from Newcastle. My father is Yemeni, from a place called Aden. He left before I was born, but he was there with my two sisters before he left, so they had a little bit of time with him. Because my mother had the mortgage on the house and she was bringing up the 3 children, later it became 4 children, she worked all day. She actually had to get a job as an engineer in a steel factory. Working on the capstan lathe. She was one of the first women to do that. And at night time, she'd go and wallpaper and do different decorating jobs, cleaning, just to make ends meet, really. So
quite a hard working life.
Yeah. And that left it open for me, as the only boy in the family, to run around while she was at work, really. My sisters used to look after us. And then obviously at night time, my mother would have somebody else look after us. We had lodgers to make ends meet, but it seemed like everybody on the street had lodgers, and it was a really mixed community, and everybody looked after each other, looked after each other's kids. But it left me lots of time for adventures.
Could you tell us a bit more about the community makeup in your growing up environment?
Well, in my backyard, we had Bangladeshis living one side of us, and an English family. It was actually a mother and her mother. A mother and a daughter, but the daughter must have been in her 50s, if I can remember rightly, and her mother was quite old. And then, like I say, the Bangladeshi family. On the other side, we had a Pakistani family. And next to them, we had 2 deaf and dumb guys that lived there. The rest of the street was made up of Arabs, Africans, English. It was a real mix of communities on that street. We had local businesses. We had a house that was turned into a shop, which was about 10 doors away from us for, I'd say, half of that time that we was there. It was quite good at the other shops because they kind of looked after everybody. Because if I went to the fruit shop, after we got the shopping, the lady would generally give me a piece of fruit for helping my mother carry the shopping home. So it was a really good community. I think majority of people were just working, because a lot of the Arabs were working in the steel factories. And yeah, everybody seemed to be employed within the steel factory, industry. I know we had coal and mines and all that sort of things, but I didn't generally know anybody that worked in any of them industries. It just seemed to be the steel industry. Everybody worked in a factory. Yeah, I think it all came to a head really in the 80s, whereby in the 70s there was still a lot of prejudice about, and because there was such a big mix on the street. Some of the English people were quite nasty, but the majority of them were really good. And you could stop and talk to anybody and ask anybody for anything, basically. And not that you always got it, but if it was help and advice, you would generally get that. There were certain families, like if you went to the shop, there were certain people's houses you had to go past that you didn't really want to go past, because you knew that something bad was going to happen. But you just lived with it. It was how it was.
And did that change over time?
Not really. The families that were that way seemed to stay that way. But we tended to know which families were like that and how to avoid them. You got given different advice by different people how to deal with them people. But you just got by the best you could. In the school it was quite bad. The teachers were quite good and tried to integrate everybody, but just on some of the occasions it was a bit too hard to bear. But I suppose no matter what child goes to school, they have something that they take the mickey out of or something like that. And you just had to kind of be tough and handle it. It seemed like nobody had any money. And everybody was just working just to make ends meet. I remember we got broke into once, and they took meat out of the fridge, and that's what got stolen. Was food out of the things. But it was generally, when you look inside a cupboard today, it's full of food. Then it was, you'd have one or two items in the cupboard. The cupboard was mainly empty. So that was the difference. We didn't have a bathroom, so we would have a bath once a week in a tin bath in the middle of the floor. Once a year, we would go to the public baths called the slipper baths, which is just about 100 yards down the road from here, at Cliff Swimming Centre, and would go there and we'd be able to have a bath in a proper bath once a year. So that was a little bit different. We had outside toilet. So when we got this house in Parsons Cross, double glazed, actually it wasn't double glazed at that time, she got double glazed and put in afterwards, but it was a nice house. It wasn't as cold and rackety as the other house, but it wasn't our community, and all the people that was around us wasn't there. So it was different in that way. I went to this new school. There was actually 3 people of colour, or boys of colour, in that school, a couple of girls. So all the prejudice and all the stuff all started again at that school. But by that time I was older, and I thought, well, the things that they're saying to me now is nothing to what has been said to me before, 10 years ago in the schools and things. So it kind of became water off a duck's back. And I just thought, I'm just going to ignore you. I've got the Sea Cadets, I don't need friends here. And I had a couple of people that I was friends with at the school. And that was it basically. All I lived for was going to the Sea Cadets. I ended up going to the Sea Cadets as a junior for about a year and a half until I was 12, and then went into the Sea Cadets until I was 16, and then joined the Navy. So for me, I had a pathway, but some people didn't.
16 when you joined the Navy. So what was life in the Navy like?
Well, I've just been to a reunion. We just talked over it this weekend. But when I first joined, it was a case of getting out of Sheffield. Not because I did dislike Sheffield, but there was no opportunities. Everybody was saying to me, you're just going to end up working in a factory. No support from the schools at that time. My senior school, comprehensive school, was totally different to my junior and middle school, where they was all very supportive. In the comprehensive school, some of the things were disgraceful, the way the teachers were. So for me, that was my best option, was to join the Navy. I joined as a steward. I wanted to join as a weapons electronical engineer. I took my test. When every year, a group of us used to go into the recruitment office, fill the forms out as a prank, just for something to do during the 6 weeks holidays, saying we want to do this, we want to do that. They would fill all the forms in and then say, oh, you're not old enough, come back next year. Well, the time that we did it, the last time that I went in to do that, I was the only one that was old enough. So they said, oh, if you're serious about it, come in and do these tests. So I took the tests and I passed as a weapons electronical engineer. And then, excuse me, and then I went to do my medical, of which I thought I would be fine with, because at that time I was sailing twice a week, I was in the swimming team. I did lots of activities, so I thought I'm not going to have a problem with my medical. Did my medical, and they told me I was colourblind. So the only thing that I could go in for was a steward, or could wait 18 months and go in as a chef or a writer. So I wanted to go in as soon as possible, so I said yes, I'll go in as a steward. After I was in for about 4 years, there was a group of about a group of 30 stewards sat together, and somebody come up with, oh, why did you become a steward? And then this person said, oh, I'm colourblind. And then, I'm colourblind, as if everybody in there was colourblind except for one person who said, I'm a steward because my dad was and my dad's dad was. So I thought, this can't be right. 29 out of 30 people can't have been colourblind. So when I came back to Sheffield, I went and had my eyes tested, and I went to a big place in Sheffield and said, I've been told I'm colourblind, can you give me a test? They gave me a test and said, no, you're not colourblind. So when I went back saying, I'm not colourblind, I want to change to be a weapons electronical engineer, they said, your maths aren't good enough. So I thought, while I'm at sea, I will redo my maths. When I went back, they said, your English is not good enough. So I redid my English, went back to them again. By this time, we were set to go down to the Falklands again for another 6 months. So they said, oh, it's because you're going down the Falklands that you don't want to do it. So I could see whatever I was doing, they were making excuses. For whatever reason, they did not want me to be a weapons electronical engineer or have anything to do with any weapons whatsoever. So at that stage, I thought, there's problems with the Navy, there's got to be racist, it's got to be a problem, I don't want to be a part of it. So I, at that stage, put in my 18 months notice and left the Navy.
So what attracted you into photography in the first place? Because that's quite a long, you've given
Yes.
quite an extensive life story.
That's right.
So where does the art and the practice come from
Well,
where you are now?
it's a little bit weird how it all happened, but I found a camera when I must have been about 7 years old. Didn't really know what it was and everything, but I had to have a little play with it, being a boy. And I remember looking out of my mother's bedroom window, the woman across the road had a huge garden and she had loads of flowers and things in there. Yeah, and so I got this camera, found a wheel on it that wound round, so I had to play with that till it wouldn't wind round no more. Looked through the window, looked through the viewfinder, and took a photograph of this garden. Once I pressed the button, I thought, I'm going to get in trouble for that. And I put the camera down and run away.
So this was your mum's or something?
So that was my mother's camera.
Right.
That was then forgotten about for many years. And then when I joined the Sea Cadets and was travelling around, my mother, for one of the Christmases or something, bought me a camera. Just a little Instamatic, put the film in, wind it on, and take the photograph. So I carried that camera with me from the Sea Cadets to the Navy, excuse me, and just monitored and took photographs all around the world of all these different exciting things. First place that we went to was the Virgin Isles, and from seeing the sludge of the canals and everything in Sheffield to these beautiful clear seas that you could see fishes swimming around in, it was like a total contrast in my lifestyle. So I took photographs through the years, never thinking really that I wanted to have it as a career. The Sheffield Star at that time was putting on a competition for the yearly calendar that they do. Competition to win a camera and get your photos in this calendar. So we selected some of the photos I'd taken around Sheffield, but they're more recent photographs really, because I had quite good ones from around the world. When we had a look at them photographs and we entered the competition, I got an answer saying, you've got through, that you came second. But I was quite proud because the person that came first got one photograph in the calendar, but I got 2 photographs in the calendar, which was really good. So from that point, I kind of believed in my photography a little bit more. As a child, or as a 14, 15-year-old, I looked at art and I wanted to be an artist.
Right.
And as much as I tried and as hard as I tried to draw a really good picture or paint a really good picture, it wasn't very good at all. So I just had to understand I wasn't an artist. I wasn't creative enough. But I used to doodle all the time. When I was talking to people, I'd be there doodling. When I was in the Navy and we was at sea, I'd just draw pictures and just doodle a lot. But still, I didn't think that I was artist material. So at a certain age, when I was looking at my photography, I realised that is to an art. That is also an art. So I used to think that, well, maybe I can make art from photographs. by making nice photographs. And I think that is where I taught myself composition. And as I was finding out things like don't shoot into the sun, the rule of thirds, every rule that I found, I broke as soon as I found it into this room. And then once we got inside there, we seen that it was a photography studio that was purpose built 10, 15 years before.
It was just derelict.
And it was just empty at that time. But it had a dark room and all that sort of thing in there. So we said to them, I said to them, could I buy this stuff off you or could I rent the room? So they said, yeah, we'll rent it to you. So one of my friends, who was an amateur photographer that I just recently met, I spoke to him about it, spoke to Susie, my fiance, about it, and Susie looked after it, said, yes, we'll do this. And what the idea of it was for us to rent out the studio to professional photographers during the day, and the money that it made, we were going to do training classes free to the young people on the evening. That didn't quite work out that way. My wife, she ended up staying at the studio in the daytime, trying to recruit people and get people in. And then on the night time, we were supposed to be teaching the young people. We ended up teaching some people. We ended up teaching some refugees, and we took some people away on residentials to Northern College and things like that to get them into the different industry. So I felt that I wanted to put something back into the community. So that's what I did. I thought, well, if we can build this group up, then that will be good. In the end, what actually happened was nobody rented the spaces out in the daytime to generate any money. So out of my building money, I used to subsidise the studio, and as the three of us as a group, we would do little jobs, and if we got paid for anything, that money went into the studio to pay the rent and things. So that was all good. And when my mother found out that I was getting into photography in that way, this strange photograph that appeared, that she said she never knew all these years where this photograph came from, of the ladies' garden across the road. So that was quite, and that came out in one dinner time, one meal that all the family was having, about the ladies' garden we was talking about. And she said, yes, I remember this photograph, but I never knew where it came from. I don't remember ever taking it, but I've got a photograph of that ladies' garden. So then that was when I admitted that I'd taken that photograph. And then she said, it's funny that you're getting into photography now, because did you realise your granddad, of which I'd never met because he died years before I was born, was a photographer. Even though he was a first mate on the ships, he had his own photography studio on the ships. And he bought all the equipment 3 times, but 3 of his ships sank and he lost all his equipment. And it was so expensive, the equipment, that it was hard to gain it again. So when he did eventually gain it again, and it sunk, on the 3rd time he must have thought, I'm not going to bother with that again, I don't know. But he was really into his photography, of which I never knew anything about until that time, till I was in my 40s. Even though it wasn't working in the way that we wanted it to work, because we'd contacted different community centres and different organisations, we'd go to festivals and photograph for them and give the organisation the photographs so they could hopefully sell them, do something with them to promote themselves, or gain some monetary funds to do some more activities with, and then would say to them, do you want us to take a group of your kids out somewhere? We'll take for a walk in the countryside. We'd use photography to do embedded learning on social skills and things like that, because I found that some of the young people in some of the urban areas kind of could see what was happening in their areas, but couldn't see what was happening on a bigger picture. And they couldn't understand if they was rude and disrespectful to people, that is exactly what them people are going to do back to them. And we had to try and make that mould. So by taking them into different areas and then seeing people's reactions to them, like on some of the... Well, what happened from it was, I had a group of people that was taken out. Now, out of, say, a group of 10 people, Some of them would take 2 or 3 photographs for the whole 4 hours we was out, and some of them would take lots of photographs. And what it allowed some of them to do was just focus on something different, just anything that wasn't their life, I suppose. And then I learnt from them, because I was wanting to teach them photography, but because some of them weren't into it, I thought, right, what do I do? Tell them they can't come next time? So how I decided to progress with my teaching was to say, right, okay, I'm going to offer to teach photography. The ones that really want to learn will learn. The ones that just want some social time with somebody else can have that. Somebody that just wants to walk can have that. So out of my trip, you take out of it what you want. And hopefully, at least one of them people will be interested in photography, and I can teach them all that I know. And I did progress that way. We ended up having, the first bit of funding that I got was from a place called Unlimited. And I took a group of people out, and we did photographs, and of which they were interested in taking photographs. I had a couple of girls. At first it was predominantly boys that I was taking out. For this session it was a mixed group, and I called it the Rural Exposure Project. And it was taking young people, like I say, into the countryside. Went to Bakewell, went up to the Peak District, and we also went round local parks in Sheffield, taking photographs. The young people were really happy with the photographs, and we progressed by going on to Photoshop and showing them how to use Photoshop from there. Through the years, I've taught young people as young as 3-year-old. I had a 3-year-old take a photograph that was in an exhibition. She was stood there looking up like this, and I thought, what is she doing? And I looked up, and there was a balloon that had floated up to the ceiling in the youth club, and she was taking the photograph. So I took a photograph of her looking up like that, and in the exhibition we had that photograph at the side of the photograph that she'd taken. I worked with that group for about 2 years. Well, actually I didn't get an interview. I got a phone call saying, would I be willing to go and teach in schools? And at that time I'd only taught at youth clubs and taught in my own way, not an academic way, and I'm thinking, I don't know whether I can do this or not. And I was going, yeah, you'll be able to do it, you'll easily be able to do it, you can do this, do that. So I thought, okay. So at that time my wife was saying, yeah, you can do this, you can do this. So I said, well, you're going to have to come and help me, because I'm going to need an assistant or something. Got taken to this school, and we got told, yes, you're going to have a meeting with these people first. It all got rushed together that quickly that we didn't have time for no meeting with nobody. Went into the school, had a couple of ideas what I was going to do with these. 4 people stood watching me doing this session, and there were 32 children in the class. And I'm thinking, I've never taught this many people, how am I going to be able to do it? We had a few different ideas. So I started talking to the children first, and said to them, who's ever taken a photograph? Majority of them put their hands up. Who's got a camera? Majority of them put their hands up. So it was totally different from the people that I'd been teaching, even though the people I've been teaching are a lot older. Some of them have never had a camera, never taken a photograph, whether they were a refugee or whether they were just from a poor background and not had a camera. Just as simple as that. So that was quite different. So after asking these questions, I had to kind of think on the spot, right, which of these ideas that I had in my head last night are we going to actually do? So we decided to do cutting and pasting, but not on the computer. So what we decided to do was get them all to take photographs. We got them all lined up. The other group with the cameras, taking photographs of each other's heads, of which we printed out so they could cut them out. So what we actually do in Photoshop with cutting and pasting, we did by printing out, cutting it out, and doing it on paper. So the theory was, next session will be actually doing this on the computers and everything. The teacher was really pleased, the children was really happy, and the provider from from the council was really happy. He was that happy, he said, would you come and meet my boss? Straight away, I need to introduce him to my boss. He said, then I can tell him how well it went and we can get you signed up to do all these sessions. but obviously we'd have the setup work, which would take an hour, post work take another couple of hours, so it was about 5 or 6 hours worth of work per day, which restricted my work for the studio, but it got my name around and I could teach the young people some arty ways of working and everything. That worked really well, and we worked really well with that until the government's changed, the council people's changed, and it just ended up getting passed over. So another group of people are doing things there now, and we're not doing the photography in the school. When I first got my photography studio, I thought, I don't want to use Photoshop to make these elaborate sets. I want to build the set myself. So one of the first big photo shoots that we did, we got some makeup artists in and some models, and we decided to do a mermaid shoot whereby my wife made corsets and fish tails, and I used organza and different coloured materials, laid them on the floor, a little bit like take art when I was younger, and got pebbles off of the beach that we'd collected with my daughter and put all them all over the floor, put a blue backdrop down with things hanging down as if they was underwater, and we took those photographs, and some people thought they'd actually been photoshopped. I had to put on one of them that I displayed, this has not been photoshopped. And there was only one bit where we put a cushion underneath the person and had her leaning downwards, and we just took the cushion away so they looked like she was diving down into the water. So what I tried to do, so now this studio, we call it the creative studio, because I've got that many props that we think we can do the setup and make that scene there rather than just taking a photograph on the green screen, of which we've got as well. And then sticking that picture on the back. And I suppose that was me trying to prove to myself that I've got creative skills. So with my shoots I try to do that. I try to be creative with my shoot, although I know that it would be a lot simpler sometimes just to take the photograph, isolate the person and put them where we want to put them. But that kind of without any external editing or post product editing. So that is what I try for mainly.
I'm sure that's where you're trying to go now with the art that you're building.
That's right, and so that, and obviously if somebody comes to me and they say I want a specific thing, and if I think the best thing for them and the best for the time structure is to go for the green screen and do it on that, then we will do that. If they want something really crystal clear, I will just use a white background. What I decided to do, as I'm driving around, I'm seeing different buildings in Sheffield, and I'm thinking it's a shame that building fell to disrepair. So I'd photograph it, thinking that is bound to come down soon. So what actually happened from the buildings that I photographed, and I seem to be able to spot them obviously with my building knowledge, that is going to be structurally unsafe shortly. So the council would then come along and pull it down, or somebody come in and renovate it and make it into a nice new shiny building. But either way, I'd got the photographs before, during and after. So if I didn't manage to get the during part because it was at the other side of town or whatever, as long as I got the dilapidated photograph and the new photograph, I felt like I'd achieved something. And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to be able to organise all these or show anybody these things. So now with all the internet and everything, I thought, well, as the internet's grown, because obviously at the beginning I wasn't sure how it was going to grow and everything, but now there's like the Yorkshire archives, so I suppose if they got to a stage where I thought I'm never going to be able to do anything with these, I think that is the place where I will send them, and they'll get some young intern to sort them out, but at least Sheffield and the world will get to see them photographs hopefully. Slowly, in comparison to some of the other cities, to say that Sheffield is the 4th largest city in the UK, well in England, so it was a case of why aren't we on the map? It's always annoyed me. Like Leeds has overtaken us now apparently. Last year with somebody, when I was saying it, somebody said no, Leeds is now the 4th largest, but I'm not really sure how that goes. But I think that we got left behind a little bit because we was like the heart and of the steel industry, for not only the UK but a lot of the world. And as that got taken away from us, and then the next thing that was taken away was like the mining and the coal, the steel. As all them things went, it's as if like we got left behind. It's a dirty, nasty, smelly place, is all that I got told by everybody that came to Sheffield, because all the buildings are all dirty and grubby and nothing was actually put into it. Do you know what I mean? So I've seen that we've started building things up, the money's run out, and that I will leave that and run on to something else. And I think that, and I may be wrong because I don't know the people involved, but to me it seemed like the European government or our government has said, oh, money's got to be put into these areas to regenerate it. So it seems like people from out of Sheffield have come flying in, oh, money's coming, run down here, jumped onto some project and started working on it. Once the money's gone, then they're not bothered to jump onto the next thing. But I think if it was Sheffield people that was there with that, they would have continued to grow it regardless. So whereas the sports would have continued to grow and grow, and the same with the music and the film. So I think with the media, I think we are and we can be strong in Sheffield. And the arts, I think that our cultural or our community and culture, the mixed cultures within our communities, I think that that is where we are going to be the best, because if we allow all them things to mix, especially in the arts, it seems like it always has been mixing. And I think that's where we're lucky in that sense, because there's not been that much money thrown at the arts, so everybody just had to get on with it. So everybody has been at the bottom within the community, and it's been voluntary and help and everything like that, and people getting involved in other people's projects. So I think that has been invaluable. Whereby some of the other industries, when it's all been about the money, and it's been segregated, oh, you can't get involved with this. So and obviously years ago, if you were the person of colour, then you couldn't go on television. If you were a person with an accent, you couldn't get on television. Now all they're wanting is people of diversity and people with diverse accents. So I think it might be time now. When I was helping young people get into photography, what I was also doing at that time was seeing that there was young people trying to do things for themselves. They were setting up bands. They were trying to be poets and different entrepreneurs. So what we said as a team was, we will help you. Whatever we can do, we'll help you. It might only be a case of us doing photographs to promote you. So I'd go to nightclubs and photograph different bands playing, give them the photographs so they can promote themselves. Event managers, I've gone around different events with them, photographing their things and helping them promote their things. And that's gone round now. So about a year ago, after going into teaching and getting the studio and everything set up, I found I had a little bit more time. The recession had kind of hit hard and people's pockets were empty and I weren't getting quite as much work. So I thought, right, well, if I'm not earning no money, what am I going to do? I can't just waste my time. So I then looked for some new bands, up and coming bands, see who else I could help. So was working with these band members that were trying to get their bands up and running, doing promotional stuff for them. I found out that one of the band members, a graphic designer, one of the girls that was sorting out all the organising everything was starting a new business as an events manager. I got musicians, people working in video and different things like this. Photographing and saying, I've got the studio here, you can come and use my resources. I've got lots of resources, come and utilise them. You're not earning no money, utilise my stuff. If you earn some money, you can chuck some my way. If you don't, no problem, we'll all be learning some skills. What my idea was if as a team we could get a production team together, then we could do videos, films, documentaries, so that way we could get into the heart of the city and talk to the people on the ground level about their issues, and that's the one that I want to do, the documentary side of things. So we've got one doing a cooking show whereby she wants to invite different groups of people from different ethnicities, and from different bands and things to come and have a meal with her, but they do the recipes and they cook the meals together, sharing ingredients, and then as they eat they're sharing stories and cultures and experiences. So we've got all these ideas going. So we've now, just this morning, been in a meeting about us starting up his own cooperative. And what it will be, we'll all still have his own businesses in its own right, and we will only use a cooperative when we join forces to do a bigger job. Any person that is interested in the creative industries to come in and get involved, and we will do different projects with. I want to show my work for my Sheffield photography of my buildings that I've taken. I want to get that all archived and put together and showcased. We had the Tinsley Towers, which was the cooling towers that were at the side of the M1 by Meadow Hall. They got demolished. I've got a sequence of 26 photographs of them coming down. I had an exhibition in the city centre about a year or so ago, but I do want to have another exhibition with that as the main runner for the exhibition. But I want the exhibition to showcase the buildings in Sheffield, the ones that we've seen before, the ones that have been knocked down. We had the old All in the Road in Sheffield, which was synonymous to Sheffield, All in the Road. It had a big massive fish tank in there. It was the meeting place for all us when we were teenagers. You'd meet down there, had a few little shops down there, tobacco stand there. People would go there, sit all day and just chat. It was a real community-based thing. When that all got filled in, of which I was part of, because when I come back to Sheffield as a builder, I worked on the Supertram, and I was a concrete constructor, so we built the bridges and I did all the bus stops and the layout for the trams. So that all got filled in. I was my dump helping fill all that all in, which was bittersweet because I loved the All in the Road, and we haven't got one now. But some of the other buildings that we've lost, that I don't think we should have lost, some of the buildings that are still here now that are getting worse and worse, more and more derelict, I'm just hoping that some of the money will get put into them to refurbish them and use them for the community. So I think I'd like to work more down that side of things, helping to get them buildings noticed and have something done to them so we can keep some of that cultural references in Sheffield. So I would like, at the moment it's going to be a case of I want to still continue with my photography, but because things are moving more to film, I'm getting involved with that for this new production team. So if our production team can start making films, once it all starts happening properly, I've already made it known to the rest of my team that I want to step back from doing the videoing and get a videographer in there to do that, hopefully a young person to step into my shoes there, me to step back onto the camera and photograph and document the actual films that get made. So I will then get back in the background and just showcase everything so it's telling a story. So there's truth there and there's actually a story to be told or left behind for people to know years and years later. Is what I would like to do. I'm glad that you've asked, because hopefully it will pass on some of what I know, and hopefully good will come out of it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.